You're fine. That's what you've decided. You haven't called anyone. You haven't cried. You're just sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that stopped being warm about 20 minutes ago, staring at approximately nothing, and you're fine. Across the room, your dog is doing a full sploot on the floor, completely horizontal, legs out behind them like a little furry pancake, dead asleep, completely unbothered by the entire emotional situation you are definitely not having. And then they lift their head. No sound, no trigger you can identify. They just lift their head, look directly at you, get up, walk across the room, and sit down against your leg, their whole side pressed into you. Warm, solid, and then they let out this slow exhale like they've been holding it, like they were waiting. You didn't say anything. You didn't move. You were, by every external measure, fine. I thought I was hiding it. Turns out I wasn't hiding anything. We're going to come back to that. Here's the thing about how we usually talk about this. We say dogs are empathetic. We say they're intuitive, emotionally intelligent. We post the videos. We share the stories. Someone's dog curled up next to them during a panic attack, stayed there for an hour, and we watch it and we say, they just know. And that framing is warm. It's beautiful, actually, but it's also doing something a little bit lazy. They just know is the conversational equivalent of saying a piano just makes music. It's not wrong exactly, it's just stopping at the least interesting part of the story. The comfortable vagueness, the mystical version, keeps us from understanding how genuinely extraordinary the real explanation is, and the real explanation is so much better. Your dog doesn't just know. What they're actually doing is running a continuous, multi-channel biological analysis of your emotional state using systems so sensitive they make our best detection technology look like a party trick. Actually, wait, that framing isn't quite right either, and I want to get this accurate because the technology metaphor misses something important. Technology scans, it reads data passively. What dogs do is something closer to fluency, the difference between someone who can identify a language and someone who thinks in it. Your dog isn't detecting your emotions from the outside. They're reading them the way you read a room you've lived in for years, instantly, automatically, and with a depth of context no device can replicate. So how does that actually work? In 2013, Brian Hare and Vanessa Woods published research laying out what they called the domestication hypothesis, and it reframes everything. Dogs didn't just become tolerant of humans over 15,000 years. They evolved toward human social cognition specifically. That's a meaningful distinction. Then there's the work coming out of the University of Portsmouth, Giuliani Kaminsky's research showing that dogs follow human gaze, understand human pointing gestures, and read communicative intent in ways that even chimpanzees, our closest genetic relatives, don't reliably replicate. And here's the part that genuinely made me put the paper down for a second. Dogs have a dedicated region in their brains for processing human faces, not animal faces in general. Not just faces, human faces. Specifically, think about what that means. Your dog's brain has architecture that exists, apparently for the primary purpose of reading you, which brings us to the part that's slightly uncomfortable and also quietly one of the most beautiful things I'd ever learned about this relationship. Your dog has an accurate, unfiltered emotional picture of you that bypasses every defense mechanism you've carefully constructed. They don't get the version of you that shows up composed to work. They don't receive the controlled voice you use on calls when you're holding something together. They get your cortisol levels. They get microtension in your posture and the change in your breathing rate and the specific chemical signature of exhaustion versus grief versus that particular flavor of stress that sits just behind your eyes. The tippy taps they hold back on days you need quiet. That's not coincidence. The zoomies that don't come when the house is heavy, that's data processing. They've read the room before you've admitted there's a room to read, and they adjust. You've never once had to explain a bad day to your dog, and yet they've never once misread one. In 2018, researchers Daniello and colleagues published a study that gets into exactly how this works at the chemical level, and it's not metaphorical. Dogs detect the actual volatile organic compounds released in human sweat during specific emotional states, and their own neurochemistry responds to what they find. Fear, stress, calm, grief. Each one has a distinct chemical signature, and your dog is reading all of them in real time. This is the same olfactory system, by the way, that allows dogs to detect incoming seizures before the person experiences any symptoms, to identify elevated blood sugar, to flag the presence of certain cancers. We're talking about 300 million olfactory receptors, compared to a human's roughly 6 million. The Frito-Paw smell you bury your face into at the end of a hard day, that same system is doing a full chemical readout of your emotional state while you do it. The comfort goes both ways, and it's more sophisticated on their end than you probably realized. No other species on Earth has co-evolved specifically to understand human emotional and communicative signals at this depth. And I want to be clear about why, because it's not a general intelligence thing. Wolves are intelligent, it's not a social animal thing. Plenty of animals are social, it's something more specific than either of those. Over 15,000 years, the individual dogs who could most accurately read human emotional states were the ones who thrived in human environments. Natural selection, working slowly, produced animals whose core competency is you. Understanding human emotional states wasn't a side effect of domestication. It was the whole project. Short pause. Bloodhounds took the olfactory specialization and built an entire personality around it. Pugs tried their best with a nose that is, at this point, mostly decorative. The capacity is in all of them. Here's what that looks like in your actual life. The behaviors you've experienced, but maybe never decoded. The dog who consistently repositions to your non-dominant side when you're anxious, that's pressure point instinct, not coincidence. The one who stops bringing toys on days you're flat, they've assessed the energy and adjusted their offering accordingly. The specific way they hover near the bathroom door when you're sick, the muffled dream barks that seem to cluster on nights when the house is tense. Pause. Tilt head slightly like a dog listening. Each one of those is a data point in a continuous emotional assessment that has been running quietly every single day you've shared space with them. You've been living inside the output of that assessment this whole time. You just didn't have the framing for it. Now here's the part that might sit a little sideways. Research on dog owner emotional synchrony, and there's a meaningful body of it, shows that chronically anxious owners measurably produce anxious dogs, not through training, not through environment alone. Through direct emotional transmission over time, your dog isn't just understanding your emotional state, they're reflecting it back. Which means, and I say this gently, if you want an honest picture of how you're actually doing, not how you think you're doing, not the version you're performing for everyone around you, watch your dog's baseline. They've been keeping an honest record. They don't have a reason not to. This isn't a guilt trip. It's not a call to perform emotional health for your dog's benefit. They'd see through that immediately anyway. We've established that. It's an invitation to take their responses seriously as data. Glance down, then back to camera slowly. If your dog has been unsettled lately and nothing in their environment has changed, check in with yourself before you pull up the vet website. Seriously. There's a concept called bidirectional regulation, just as their presence lowers your cortisol, and studies out of Washington State University confirm it does. Measurably, within minutes, your conscious calm lowers theirs. The relationship is a feedback loop. You're both inside it. You both affect it. That's not a burden. That's actually kind of extraordinary. So, back to the kitchen table. The cold coffee. The sploot abandoned mid-nap. I thought I was hiding it. Turns out I wasn't hiding anything. Here's the full picture of what actually happened in that moment. 15,000 years of coevolution. 300 million olfactory receptors reading your chemical signature before you'd taken a breath. A dedicated neural region processing the specific geometry of your face, the microtension around your eyes, the way your posture was doing that thing it does when you're holding something you haven't named yet. A brain that spent years building a detailed, accurate map of your emotional landscape and noticed in an instant that something was off. The warm exhale, the whole side pressed against your leg. The dog who was fully asleep and woke up for you anyway. That wasn't magic. That wasn't them just knowing. That was someone who understands you, genuinely, precisely, without agenda, showing up without being asked. Not because they're mystical, because understanding you is, quite literally, what they were made to do. Here's what I want from you in the comments. Think about the moment your dog showed up for you in a way you couldn't explain at the time, but now, knowing this, makes complete sense. The moment that felt like coincidence and wasn't. Drop it below. I'll be reading them. Those stories deserve to exist somewhere other than just your memory. And if this one meant something, share it with someone who has a dog and doesn't fully understand yet what they're living with. Next video, we're going into why your dog follows you from room to room and why the explanation is both more scientific and more emotionally loaded than you'd expect. See you there.